Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Andrei. Today let's talk about HTMX library, and this library helps to execute requests directly from HTML tags. This is very helpful when you want to avoid running JavaScript on the client side, and you could use this very helpful utility function to execute calls to the backend to get the data. And the most importantly, the call to the backend is executed without loading the whole page. It just being called like a partial request, and you can submit data. And in response, you get back not just JSON, but you get proper HTML structure, and you can replace part of the page with this new content that you get back from the backend. And the page will be updated, and user will see the new content. Actually, HTMX reminds me a lot the concept of partial submit and partial trigger. This is implemented in Oracle EDF framework, which I was working a lot in the past. And Oracle EDF is Java Server Faces JSF based framework from Oracle. And they have option to put partial submit on the button, on link, whatever. And in response, you could refresh part of the page like a table or a form. And this allows the developer to implement logic which allows for user to interact with the application without reloading the whole page. So the concept is very similar. The thing is that HTMX is a very light library, and it can be used with any kind of technologies that you're using in the backend. And in my example today, I'll be using Django, and actually I'll be using a sample application from Matt Layman blog. I'll post below the video. I thought it doesn't make sense for this quick video to implement a separate sample. I took whatever example I found on Google, and it demonstrates very well how HTMX works. And what I'll try to do, I'll not teach you tutorials step by step how to build application with HTMX, because you can go on website. There are other tutorials as well that explains that. What I'll do is I'll try to show you how it works from the browser perspective, and how a request is executed, and then how we get back the response. Okay, so let's jump to the screen. First of all, this is the homepage of HTMX library. Provides very nice set of documentation. You can browse through yourself, and as soon as you start developing, it will be your guide. Right, and the sample application that I'm showing today is implemented by this guy, Matt Layman, and I'll post the URL to the blog post that talks about the code which I'm showing today. So this is the code. And this is the application. It basically displays a list of tasks. Those tasks are being stored on a local Django database, and from the Django backend, this list is coming in HTML structure and being displayed on UI. And there's an option that we can select on a task, and we can delete this task. And the main point is that task deletion request, it will be handled in a partial way through the HTMX library without submitting the whole page. Because by default, when you're using Django and using Django HTML server-side rendered templates, default way with Django is to do full submit and send the full request to the server, where it will be processed and the whole page will be returned back. While this works in many cases, still it's nice to have the option to do partial submit, especially when your page is complex. There are many components on the page, so you don't want to refresh everything and delay user. This just with the partial request, what you get is better user experience. And this is one of the strong points of single page applications. Usually they say that out of the box you get this partial request without reloading whole page. So now with HTMX, we can bring the same functionality to any applications, to Django applications with HTML server-side rendered templates as well. Okay, so let's look first in code, and There are a few files that we will go through quickly. The main files where I believe you should point your attention as well when you'll be studying HTMX in Django. So the first one is models file. Here we got model definition for the list that is displayed on UI. It's a very simple model with title and description and additional created at updated at fields. And the thing, if you're new to Django, when you define model class, later you need to do run migrations and run migrate command. And based on this model class, you will create database table structure. And later, when you'll execute requests, you could either populate this table with default data, or you could run update, delete, create operations, whatever you want. Full CRUD set of operations is supported. So we got our model. The next thing in Django is view. So the view is a backend thing that supports whatever you display on the UI. Yeah, this is like metadata that can contain a class or a function which contains information how the stuff, what stuff you expose to the UI. Actually, another name probably could be the endpoint, backend endpoint, because this endpoint returns the data to the UI. So for this sample application, we got display tasks and delete tasks endpoints in this view. And delete task endpoint is executed from the partial HTMX request. What we do here is we are deleting task and we are returning new list of tasks to the task list template. And then based on this new list of tasks, HTMX will replace the existing HTML content and display the content that you would expect to see with one of the tasks deleted. Okay, there are two templates. One is a wrapper template in the sample application, and it's called display tasks. And this is how it was done by Matt. And it includes a template called task list. And I think it's very well serves the purpose of the sample application, because display task template, it acts like a wrapper, and actually all the action happens inside the task list. But later, when you explore it from the UI in the browser console, for example, you will see that the content which is returned through HTMX response doesn't contain anything that is included in display tasks, like this header. It would return this div structure, and it allows to understand that indeed HTMX response is partial. It doesn't reload whole page, it just reloads the content of the div that you are working on right now. So this is the div which includes the list of tasks, and we got here everything what you see with HX is related to HTMX library. So we got confirmation message on this div. Then we got HX target, and it points to the ID of this div, and it means that when response will come from HTMX library, right from this partial request, then we would like to target a certain HTML element with this specific div, and what we would like to do is HX swap outer HTML. This means that we would like to replace whatever content belongs to tasks div with the new content which was returned through HTMX response. Okay, then this is standard Django thing. It's a for loop. We display list of tasks in a loop, and each task is rendered like a link, and each link got another property from HTMX called HX delete. There are other like a post and get. And this means with HX delete you could execute endpoint from the backend, and we call, using Django syntax, we call URL delete task, and we pass task ID, which is coming out of the box from the loop, from the Django loop. And this means that as soon as we click on this link, request will be sent to the server, but this request will be partial, not full request, and stuff would happen on the backend, and we will get back the response from HTMX. Then we will target div with ID task, and we will replace this div with the new list of tasks. Okay, and let's double check this. URL delete tasks is defined in Django backend in URL list of URLs. This is the URL, and you can think about it like an endpoint from the backend which serves this specific name, delete tasks, delete task, right? And this endpoint is responsible to execute request when it will come from HTMX. Of course, if you would not use HTMX, then you would do full submit from through a button or through the same link, and you would call the same URL endpoint. The only difference will be that the whole page will be refreshed, and in response you will get full response, and yeah, the same information will be displayed, but you will require the full reload. It will require the full reload of the page. Okay, so let's see how it works. This is all about the code, and I'm running the application. Then I got network monitor. I got 3 tasks. So let's click on the second task and see what happens. We click, and it asks for the confirmation as we have defined on a div. We click OK, and we see that task disappeared, and the ID was refreshed as well correctly. And we can see that this request is being logged on the network monitor. So if you go here, we see response. So response, as expected, only the div that was set up to work with HTMX partial request, only the content for this div is returned with two tasks, as expected. If you go to headers, we'll see request header, and we see that delete request is executed for the tasks endpoint, and this is number 10 is probably the ID of this task that we're deleting. And yeah, it's kind of standard delete request, and in response we get this partial response, not the whole page, but we get the div that was enabled for HTMX request. Yeah, so this is the quick video, and to explain how HTMX works and what it looks like to execute partial request through HTMX and get back the response and display it. And yeah, the main point is that it's not HTMX doesn't implement a new concept or whatever, but it provides a very handy and useful tool to build a light front end without introducing too much of JavaScript frameworks and so on, to be able to interact in a very light and simple way with the backend without reloading the whole page for those partial requests. And also you could target different areas of the page and refresh this area when partial response from HTMX comes back, and you can display the new data. So hopefully this was useful, and hopefully this will inspire you to try it out and try to build UI frontends just with HTML and HTMX without going deep with different JavaScript frameworks that try to solve the same problem, but in a more complex way probably. So thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye.